Hi everyone, I'm Harv, Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and this is Stuff That Matters Now. Welcome back, guys. I am really excited today to be interviewing Peter Butler. Kia ora, Peter.
Kia ora, Harv.
And we've got a little bit of idea where we're going today, but this is going to be, we're sitting in Palmerston North here in this very, very cool space, and I'm going to get some photos of this. It's just, when you go into a building, you just have that wonderful vibe, and this is one of those buildings that's got that vibe. So I love being in this space already, Peter, and looking forward to this interview. So, Peter Butler, who are you?
Well, interesting question. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. Who am I? So when people ask me that, I always go back to ko wai koe no he koe. So I'll start there. Tongariro te maunga, taupo nui atia te moana, ko te hihu te tangata, ki te tātoku nei māma, ko Ngāti hine me Ngāti waiwai o na hapu, ki te tātoku nei pāpā, me Ngāti whititama, me Ngāti turangi tukua o na hapu. He uri au no tūwharito, engari he whakapapa e hono hoki i au ki Ngāti kauwhata, Ngāti pāua me nāitai. So I'm basically, I wouldn't say young these days, but I always say a young Māori boy growing up in the Highbury community that has been on a journey around reconnecting to who I am and where I come from. Since I was 5 years old, still on that journey, and that's who I am. What I do, I always struggle with this because people always ask me, what do you do, and all that sort of stuff, and it's been put in different boxes over time, and terms like social entrepreneur have been put forward to me, and the CEO of this organisation, but I utilise the term now called Kaihautu. So it's like the captain of a waka that helps set a direction, assist everyone to work as a team, and keep us on track to where we need to be getting or heading to. So that's the term that we utilise now, mainly because it's around, in our space, re-indigenising our space, and just being proud of what we're doing and just being creative in that. And it's an interesting concept. I love what I do, and I believe that I'm really fortunate to do what I do, and mainly because the people that I come across, and especially the young people. I always see people have said to me in the past, why do you do that? How come you've been doing it for so long? Why do you do that? And it's as cheesy as the smiles on their dials, and we see, I've been fortunate enough to see really positive change over a period of time. And I just believe I'm really fortunate to do what I do, and have had opportunities and want to assist young people to see that, and families to see that. So,
Peter, what was it like growing up in Highbury?
Good question. When I grew up in Highbury, everybody got on really, really well. So, like, everybody had a state house. There was no, what's the transitional housing or emergency housing then. We all grew up in state houses. I lived in a 2-storey, I still remember the address, 33 Brentwood Ave. I grew up there as a 5-year-old. My parents were quite young. They were factory workers. Every household, this is a vivid memory, every household had a vegetable garden. And I even remember at times my dad would get me the wheelbarrow, and then we would, the surplus that we had, and we'd swap with our neighbours, those sorts of things. Me and my sisters, there were 3 children. The interesting thing is one of my sisters is the HR advisor for Fonterra. Another one is a school principal in in Martin, actually. So she was at James Cook Primary, and now she's at Rangitike College. And so we've obviously branched off on different things. We're not factory workers or labourers, but when we were that young, a vivid memory of mine was that we all used to walk to school at 5, and then our parents would go off to work at 7:30 in the morning. They'd wake us up, or 7 or 7:30, wake us up. School wasn't, till 8:39, so we would get they would get our breakfast ready, so we'd get up when they would get up, prepare our lunches, and we'd be off to school, leave ourselves. So my sisters are only, one's 1 year younger, my younger sister's 2 years younger, and then we used to race home because we all had chores to do, and it was clean the house, cook tea, and look after the veggie garden. So everybody used to race home because the veggie garden was the easiest one. Just grab the hose and water it. But Highbury was quite a fun place to be. Everybody had a bike. Most families had bikes. Everybody had fun. You played in the creek. You had a fort. The Tākoro shops had a huge Chinese vegetable shop that had Guy Fawkes rockets, and I remember getting milk bottles and buying rockets, and we used to fire them at each other at the park. It was, that's what growing up in the 70s was in the community. We didn't really see gangs. I didn't see gangs happen until the 80s, really, and it was, everybody looked after each other. It was really communal. All of the families had big families. We had actually quite a small family, and I remember families like the Taiti whānau, the Wahos, they were big families, the Reeds, and everybody played sport. Softball was big. Rugby league, they were big sports, and they were real family orientated, whānau orientated, because that community was mainly Māori and Pacific Island, really, or actually mainly Māori.
Softball's always been big with Māori, hasn't it?
Yeah. It died away for a while, and it's
come back. Why did the gangs turn up, do you think?
I believe it was two things: lack of identity, who they are, where they come from, also the loss of work and employment. So it was people just trying to connect, be together, be a part of something bigger than themselves. I think that's inherent of who we are as Māori and Polynesian. We try and connect to people, and clubs and activities were like that. And obviously I think back that time, I don't really know what was going on TV. I remember carless days and all of those sorts of things, and most cars were big cars like V8s or that sort of thing. But the interesting thing was, like the only time my family was rugby league family, so my dad, he came from a big family of 9 brothers and sisters, and my mum had 3 brothers and sisters, but then an extended whānau of, I'm not too sure, 13, 14. Yep. And then obviously coming to an urban environment was quite different. Yeah.
So, look, I had a conversation with somebody the other day about, a big problem in New Zealand now is this socio-economic mobility is really difficult, because what you're describing before with your parents being factory workers and now the 3 of you are not factory workers is mobility. And it's not everybody has that opportunity, but you obviously had the opportunity and you took it. That's becoming less and less prevalent, and it's a big issue for New Zealand now.
I think it's a huge issue. Like, the interesting thing is that everybody was engaged in school. It was, back then, it was expected. Everybody was expected to go to school. It was very rare that you were taken out of school. And I can't even remember. The only people I remember not being at school were those that were removed by the state.
Right.
And I had some friends at primary school that were removed. So they might have been in a violent, so the parents or the mum might have been in a violent relationship, so she separated, and then the children were taken away by the state. So that was the only time that I saw that. But it impacted on me, and I still know those people, and I engage with them quite a lot, and it's an interesting journey. And even with the state, the way it all works, the work that I do, I come across that consistently. Yeah.
So let's move to the work you do now. You are CEO of what?
Okay, so it's a NGO, so a not-for-profit. It's an organisation that was started in actually 1980 by a group of parents that were feeling the impacts of what was happening. That they wanted to support each other because their children were being brought home from the police because they were hanging out in the square, and they were just feeling a little bit lost and not sure how to support each other. So they formed a little support group. Back then there was a process called Mātua Whānau, so the Department of Social Welfare had, obviously all around the country, there are a whole bunch of little urban communities that were predominantly Māori, rural Māori, moving to urban environments, in-state homes, and the freezing works here, Longburn, was starting to wind down. And what was happening then, people were starting to lose work, and obviously the impact of that around losing work, then engaging with the welfare system, that started to become prevalent. And then this group got together, formed it, working from a garage, and all they tried to do was just to support each other, but also engage with police and how to best deal with their children. And then
so were these parents?
They were parents.
Yep.
Just parents just doing it off their own back. And they did it out of their own garage. And then the City Council, actually, and with Mātua Whānau, the Department of Social Welfare, the Ministry of Māori Affairs, it was called, the Department of Social Welfare, Ministry of Māori Affairs, they had a process called Mātua Whānau. And there was and from what I remember, because I started getting involved with the group around 1994, but in 1981 they had the Mātua Whānau process helped them support, get some funding to mobilise themselves, organise themselves into an incorporated society, and then potentially seek funding to be able to support their initiatives. And they started off doing a softball team and a kapa haka group, just reconnecting as families and trying to support their children to, one, remain in school, two, continue to be the best versions of themselves. Now, they worked really, really hard, and actually at that stage, I was how was I old then? I was probably about going to intermediate school, and I noticed that in the early 80s, late 90s, early 80s, in our community, used to walk down the parks and used to see dried glue bags. So amongst young people, glue sniffing was quite high. And so this community group, that was one of their projects around eliminating glue sniffing. So it was not unusual to see at the Highbury shops. And then back then, I'm not too sure if you knew about Highbury back then, Harv. There was a group called the Highbury Hoods. It was mainly because young people wearing a swan dry with a hood, and they were called the Highbury Hoods. And they were just hanging out there. Some glue sniffing. Glue sniffing was quite big back then. It was the trend. And I remember going to school at those stages and seeing these bags, plastic bags with dried glue, and I'm going, what the heck's that? And then I know that this community group was working hard to really combat that, because that, and I've seen some people over time have actually spun them off their dial, mental health issues galore. Well, I'm glad that, it's toxic. So I'm glad that's been eliminated.
I saw some kids sniffing glue on the beach at Ohope, of all places, a beautiful beach for those of you from outside New Zealand. And the impact it had on this young guy, it was just like a smack to the front of the head and his head back. I went, wow, I thought, none of that can be good for you. It was a hell of a thing. And look, for those who don't know the area or live outside the country. Highbury, in our region, has got the name for being the tough neighbourhood.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. It's got the name for being the tough neighbourhood. Like, I don't know whether it's unfortunate or fortunate, but I've described it to people outside Palmerston North as being the Ōtara of Palmerston North. So that's the South Auckland
Yeah.
of that, and mainly because of the state housing there and the population. But a lot of really hard-working families were brought up there, like. And they worked hard. But there was a period of time there where things went a little bit haywire. And the 80s, early 80s, through to the early 90s, really. And anyway, this group was working along in that process, trying to get funding, working out of a garage. The city council said to them, you can't operate out of a garage. So they managed to work with the city council, partner with the city council to build a purpose-built community centre. And so that was done early 80s, and the Polytech course built that, and it was relocated there. I got involved with the community centre sort of towards the end of that period. They did that group then, the families then did a fantastic job around the reactiveness of that, dealing with that glue sniffing issue, dealing with the issues that were going on at the time. Unfortunately, some of those issues still continue. And they were getting tired there. They were only funded for one youth worker. They had volunteers, and they were just getting to the stage where they had enough. And then I was training to be a teacher, actually, at Teachers College, and doing a total immersion reo course about reconnecting who I am as a young Māori male. And then the karaua who was teaching us for whai kōrero said to me, "Boy, what are you doing? What are you doing tonight?" And I was like, I haven't got training tonight, so yeah, nothing. I'll come and grab you. We're going to a hui. So I went with him. Next minute, I go to this community centre meeting. I'm there, and then all of a sudden, I've been given the job for 6 months to be the youth worker in Highbury. And I was given the task.
How old were you at that
I was 23. 23. So I was like, really? Yep, I do. I'm a student. I do need a bit of money, but okay, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, and so what am I now? I'm nearly 53, and I've been with the organisation ever since. So one youth worker there. They had 6 months to turn it around because things were they were struggling a little bit because they were burnt out. They were tired. They were over the issues that they were dealing with, and they just needed a new bit of energy, really. And so and this karaua, his name was Bob Tamihana. He was from the East Coast, and actually from Tūhui, and he grabbed me and said, "You'll be great for this. I think you can do it." And then all of a sudden he saw something in me, and then I've been there ever since.
So 23, were you qualified as a teacher at that point?
No, I was it was a pre-teacher training program. So it was like it was a total immersion program. So it was you had to obviously re-grasp the reo, and then from then go into Teachers College.
Did you so? Your upbringing, you weren't brought up in full immersion?
No, my grandparents spoke Māori, but they encouraged us not to learn things Māori because they were beaten for it. So my grandmother on my mum's side, my grandfather on my mum's side spoke Māori. My grandmother and grandfather on my dad's side died. My grandfather got killed in an accident in 35, car accident, and my grandmother got killed when she was 40 in a car accident as well. So those times, drinking and driving was quite big. People would have a few beers.
Was everybody?
That was in the. I think they passed away. My grandmother died when I was 5. So what was that? I think she passed away in the early 70s. Mm-hmm. And then.
And she wouldn't have been wearing a seatbelt.
No, in the old cars, lap belts, and so she got killed in that. And the interesting thing is that, my family had a lot of Māori land through her whakapapa, and she had a farm. They had a farm just outside of Martin, and it was a Māori farm. And then, unfortunately, her second husband, in those days, everything went back to the husband, not to the family. And so my family my dad and his sisters lost their land, and also the rights of their whānau land around their Māori land that they had. And we've only just recently gained that back, probably in the last 10 years, and set up a whānau trust and trying to get things going for them. And but yeah, that was...
Let's just go back to the comment you made about your grandmother, that she was beaten for speaking te rāua. It's been interesting this week. One of the guys from the Flight of the Conchord was talking about that in an interview, that his grandmother would be beaten for speaking te rāua.
Well, I can't believe how much that impacted. It hasn't actually. I haven't realised that until probably recently, on how much that's impacted on me and everyone else who's lost that. You can see right across the country, people are delving into regaining that knowledge and that mātauranga around who they are, where they come from, and actually just learning te reo. But yeah, it's been huge. So
tell me, what impact has it had on you growing up without it, and then it being... I'm going to use the word infused because I don't know a better word. You'll have a better word in Māori for that. But what's it done for you to do that?
I think for me initially, I was stuck in two worlds. I'm fair, so in the Māori community at that time, I didn't feel like I fitted in. In the Pākehā community, I didn't fit in, so I didn't fit, and then it was like I was stuck. But the only ones who actually realised I was Māori were Māori. Would always look at me and go, and give them the eyebrow or whatever, and then
I wish I got a video of it.
And just little stuff like that, and I'd go, okay, well they sort of know, and my wife goes, you can't not tell. Look at your nose, So, and she's Indian actually, and
but Peter, you could be Italian too.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when we go overseas, like Mexico, sometimes they think I'm Mexican or whatever, but. Or at times, the first time I was in Mexico, everywhere I went, people would go, nativo, you're nativo, so you're native, and where are you from? And so it's sort of connections there. But yeah, it's an interesting concept. And then...
So just going back to the question.
Yep.
For you personally, embracing the culture, what's it done for you?
Well... We always, the benefit that I had, especially my mum, she would send me back to one of our marae in Tūwharetoa. So a marae was a Ngāti marae, so it's kōrero marae. It sits between Tūrangi and Taupo. And I had cousins the same age as me, and I'd get sent back to one of my granduncles, or kōrero of mine. And initially I loathed it, because every time I went back I used to get my shoes stolen, even my undies actually were like taken, because he's a city kid turning up to the marae, and I'd have everything stolen, and then by the time of it I'd have mosquito bites and all the sort of things. So I was like a little bit uncomfortable. I actually
no undies and
no undies. I'd have my pants would be swapped out for, and then I'd go back with holey pants or holey t-shirts, because my cousins would take my city ones, and I'd be like that. And I'd stand out like a sore thumb on the marae. But then what I realised from that over time, especially with my interaction with that marae, I've taken groups of young people back there, and they embraced me as one of their own. And I'm indebted for my mum for doing that. I used to hate it. I used to cry on the phone and go, Mum, I don't want to stay here, da-da-da. Riding horses, fall off the horses, that sort of stuff. And then...
it sucks not being good at something or not
fitting in. And then it wasn't until later on when I started doing this work, and we took groups of young people back to that marae, and the realisation I had of like, wow, reconnecting, and especially with a lot of urban Māori kids that actually didn't have that experience the same as me, where I got sent back, and some young people I work with, they don't know who they are, where they come from, what even iwi they are, and and it was like quite empowering for me to go, well, I actually have a tūranga waiwai, I do have a place where I can connect to, and I can show this to these young people. And I remember comments to them, they go, it's so dark here, where's the street lights? There's no street lights out here. Yeah, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Different question, same subject. If you hadn't connected with your culture, who would you be today?
I have no idea. I'd be lost in the cesspool of people that are lost. To be honest, there was something deep down, especially gut-wise, that was yearning for that. And I, even as a young teen, my sisters would join kapaka. They went to a different school. They went to QEC. I went to Palmy Boys. We didn't really have a kapaka group at Palmy Boys, and they were fully into kapaka. And I used to tease them about, really, what are you doing that for? That's not going to get you nowhere. 10, 15 years later, they're not really into Te Ao Māori as much as I am, and it's just crazy. And the only reason I am is because I believe it's one of the solutions to young urban Māori, or even just Māori in general, is reconnecting to our culture.
Interesting. I remember Sir Bob Jones maybe 10 years ago, and he's got an opinion on lots of things, and sometimes he's a complete dickhead, but sometimes he's worth listening to. But he said, this learning Maori, it's a waste of time. It's not a language that's going to be used or whatever, and it's just a waste of time.
Yep.
And I remember at the time listening to him going, oh, that's interesting. I wonder, and I didn't say I agreed with him, but it struck a chord with me, going, and that's not that long ago. That's maybe only 10 years ago that he said that. And now, and apparently there is a critical number of people that need to speak a language for it to survive. I don't know what the number is, but I remember seeing it at the time. Yep. And I don't know if we're at that point now. I think we are. No, I think we're beyond that point now. That it's being instilled in not Maori culture. It's being instilled in New Zealand culture.
Yeah.
Now.
It's what makes us unique, and I actually didn't realise it until I started travelling, and then, I'm just trying to think. It was, me and my wife were in Mexico in the mid-90s, and then I remember trying to barter in a bit of Spanish that I knew, and then my wife was talking to me about, no, it's too dear, but we were speaking Māori to each other, and then people would stop and go, what language are you speaking? Because obviously the first thing they see, as soon as you're fair, they think you're American, and then as soon as they hear your accent, they don't know, then they look at you a bit more intently and go, oh, you're nativa. My wife's quite dark, so she's quite olive skinned, so they thought she was Mexican straight away, and then as soon as they figured it out, like, oh, they were quite inquisitive about things, but then obviously the language was like, wow, they've never heard that before, and they were really inquisitive. So then tried to figure out, curious really around. And
it is a beautiful language, Peter. It's a beautiful language to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. And obviously the interesting thing though is that on my journey, the more and more you get to know, you don't realise the layers of knowledge that sit within it and the fluidity of it. And like, I'm looking forward, this is probably future focused, but if you think about what's gone on since the early 80s, the kohanga reo movement and all of that, early 80s, that's when that started. And the work we've done, I've had conversations with the police around, just out of curiosity, how many young people are you arresting that are coming through kohanga reo or kura kaupapa? And they're like scratching their head and going, well, we've got a high percentage of young Māori here, but how many are coming through the total immersion schooling? They couldn't count them. And I'm like, wow. And then they're going, why is that? I was like, well, look at the reason why some of those young people have gone off the rails. They've got a lack of identity, lack of culture. They don't know who they are. They're trying to grab. In the early 90s, the big focus was who wants to be South Central LA gangster, because that was popular. You know, Snoop Dogg and all of that was popular around youth culture and pop culture. So we were getting influenced by that. And it wasn't until really young people sort of switched, or whānau were trying to go connect more to your own culture. That's where the answers are. So, yeah, that's what the journey's on now.
Yeah, and it's lovely to see the momentum. And I had the pleasure of listening to Jennifer Ward Leyland. She won a prize up in a Woman of Influence and got up and spoke in Te Reo.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting going, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, she's just, she has, you know, she's an actress, and I'm sure that helps.
Yeah. The performance. Yeah.
But this performance, but I just sat there and went, oh my God. That was just, you know, it's yeah. And you just hear the full, I don't know how to describe the power of it. You know, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think, well, you know, the few wānanga that I've been on, it's about, you know, there's a proverb, he tāngata whakarongo, around it's a treasure to listen, but not only listening with your ears, listen with your eyes, your third eye, your heart, and your gut, so that it's a feeling. And I know that for me, the more and more I reflect on that, that's probably over the journey that I've had, that's been my saving grace. The intuition and feeling has been, I make a lot of my decisions around if it feels right. It doesn't have to be look right or the figures make sense. Are we doing this for the right reasons? And if it feels right. Yeah, so it's been a constant.
And you've got to have the ability to access the information coming from the body, because it's so easy not to do that and use the mind, which is very fallible, and instead of using the body, and it's a whole different intelligence level, and I'm getting a little bit better at it, but actually just acknowledging the body that something doesn't feel right, and go, so, you know, we haven't got all the facts, or maybe we do all have all the facts, and the facts say, yeah, this is great, and the body's going, no, this sucks. Yeah.
Well, even that aspect to have, like, even if I go back to the Whānau Centre again in the early days, back then when they first started that kaupapa, they did some old rituals that I believe have kept the organisation in good stead. So, like attracting the right people, accessing resources, but even just continuing to grow and nothing too dramatic has impacted on it. And so, like for example, when we built the new facility, so we've got a purpose-built facility that was built early 2000s. We managed to fundraise and secure a deal with the City Council that it would be an asset for the city, that for every dollar that we fundraise, they would match it. And we ended up fundraising $800,000, so they sort of choked.
I was going to say, that makes it tricky for the council.
Yeah, but then we said, well, we're not going to own it. It becomes an asset for the city. It's a community centre. So that was a sort of purpose-built basketball court, classrooms. We've got a jiu-jitsu gym in there, mainly because one of our staff is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and counselling rooms, mainly because we outgrew the other facility. Now we're at a stage, at another growth phase where we're starting to outgrow this facility. Now we've got 3 facilities across the city, including this one, and another one, mainly different service streams that we facilitate. We don't only just work in Highbury anymore, it's across the city and across the Manawatu. But it's been the rituals that they did, because I remember when we built that building, the kuia at the time, Kui Ka Tate, who's passed away, said to me, boy, we've got to get the modi from that building, bring it over. And I was like, pardon, whai? She goes, yeah, the modi from there has to come over. And I was like, so I sat down with her, what do you mean? She goes, when that building was built, we put a modi stone underneath it. Because we're moving the organisation from there to here, we need to bring it over. So before this building gets built, we need to do that ceremony. I was like, okay. So just totally led by her and her son, Potaka Tate, who was there, who was a really good mentor of mine, he's passed since. And they coached me in how we're doing that, and we did a dawn ritual around bringing the modi, putting it underneath the current building, and we sort of pulled the plans out. I think here's the basketball court. I will do it here. We put it there. And now we have a process. We've got a sticker on the ground where it's got, there it is there, a picture there, like a fire, like a ceremonial fire, and we start conversations with the young people around it. So we have a portafita when we might introduce them, and we do a little speaking circle and connect with everyone, and you can, so we do that there. And I've always, when my knowledge in that got better, I realised I think we've been successful because our people have done things properly and have helped us be protected and help grow, because we're working with, over the time we're working with mental health issues, impacts of colonisation, education, the whole gambit. I believe, especially in that space, we've attracted really good people and great people, not good people, great people that are passionate about what we do, are passionate about who they serve, and about our purpose.
Peter, I'm going to dig into the effects of education. Because I've covered colonisation before in different podcasts, but I'm interested in your comment about effects of education.
Okay, pull me up if I'm going to rant, Harv, because
Here we go.
I need to be cautious in a way, because we have a relationship with the Ministry of Education, and we facilitate alternative education as one of our programs. We've been doing that since 1999. So what are we now? 2021. What's that? 23 years. Do you know what alternative education is?
No.
So alternative education is a process where back then young people in our education system, the Ministry of Education is obligated to keep teaching young people right to the age of 16. Okay? So now, young people, well, even then, young people were getting exited. The term back then was alienated from mainstream education. Unfortunately, the majority are Māori and Polynesian. They were getting exited out of school. So if you're truant, if you're kicked out or expelled or excluded back then, Labour a few governments ago, I think it was under Helen Clark, changed the law around you can't expel a young person if they're under 16. You can exclude them. Hence, that's why they developed alternative education. So alternative education is these different streams of it across the country. I struggle with it. I struggle with it because, I'm going to be frank here, I've termed Ministry of Education moi, and friends of mine, Whanau, Callahan actually termed this, because I was having a rant with her about the ministry, and she, MOE is moi. Moi is the term in Māori for sleep, and we believe that they need awakening because there's too many of our young people getting spat out of school. And, it's constant, back then and even now, institutional racism, systemic racism. If you look a little bit different, if you act a little bit different, potentially say the wrong thing, you've spat out. And I constantly struggle with that process, mainly because when you meet with those young people, all they are is innocent, vulnerable young people that just potentially haven't been guided in the right light. And it actually breaks my heart that I think that it's in our country, we can service this. We shouldn't have young people getting spat out of the school system. And then you go to countries overseas, and yet people sponsor you have to pay for education, and it's just crazy. Truancy, all of that. Yeah, it needs a shake-up. It doesn't engage our young people enough.
Peter, I had a first-hand...
I was being nice too there.
You were being nice, very controlled. Your wife would be very happy with that. Peter, I had a situation with I was chairman of our local rural school and I was farming, and we had a young woman came back to her family, Maori family. She had been over in Hawke's Bay, and I'm not sure the circumstances, but she arrived back, and she had all brothers. She had one younger brother, older brothers, and they were a bit naughty. And the younger brother was a very interesting young man, very bright. And this young woman came back, and she was statuesque as a 12-year-old, very bright, a leader, had a very short fuse, and could be pretty stroppy. And we embraced her and we wrapped around her, and she became the leader of the school. She was stunning. And it took only a few months to include her, get it embedded in the school. Now, the interesting thing is there were some other young Maori women at the same level, maybe a year younger than her, who have gone on and captained the New Zealand Sevens rugby team and so forth, but this young woman was just led them. To put it in perspective, she went to the local secondary school, and I went along and saw the principal with our principal and said, "You've got this young woman coming through. She's going to take a little bit of bedding in, but if you do, she is your head girl in 5 years' time, right? But you just need to, get with the program and whatever, and she's gold." Now, she lasted about 3 weeks, and boys were making fun of her name, and it was quite a difficult name to say, and I won't say it because I don't want to, but it was a difficult name to say, and these boys were making fun of her name, and just as the teacher walked into the classroom, these boys had turned around and faced the front, and she came up behind them and grabbed this boy from the back of the head and slammed his head into the desk and broke his nose and walked out. She got expelled. And we went to the teacher and said, "What the fuck? You cannot expel a 13-year-old, right? We told you this is just a settling in period." And he wouldn't have it, would not listen to it. And yeah. And so I look at that and go, that was just 100% waste, because they just could not cope with her. And we were a little country school. We could cope with it, but it took some effort.
The thing about young people, they got a difficult time. It's puberty going on, hormones going crazy, trying to figure out what's going on. They've got, it's a difficult time in your life. And you think about the times, when you were a teen or when we were all teens, it's a crazy time.
Yep.
Now, and then you've got to navigate all of that, and then try and actually act like an adult and behave and do the right thing. It's just a crazy time.
One other piece of the story I forgot to add. The principal said, "Oh, she's a such and such," naming the family. She's a such and such. I went, "Look, the brothers, yep, they're naughty. What you got here? Different. Okay? Different. Don't." Right? We couldn't differentiate himself. Couldn't differentiate that. And it was the next year he came to speak at our local school and said, "Oh, is your daughter Harv, is coming to the school?" I said, "Mate, if she's not good enough for you, fuck, there's no way my daughter's good enough for you. Nah, she's not going to your school." you know, and it's just like, oh, don't be like that. And I said, mate, we gave you a gift, you know, and you didn't know what to do with it. And what was at play there? Bit lazy, racism, labelled, and yeah.
Well, it's some people just don't want to put the effort in to actually see the gem come out.
Yeah.
You know, a bit of pressure. The next minute the diamond is exposed. You know, we see that all the time. I that's what gets me off on this work is that you see those rough diamonds start coming through, and you see a little bit of achievement around. You know, it's as simple as even just turning up every day with a smile. And like the problem I have is that when you start scratching the surface, a few years ago we managed to secure a psychologist within our organisation who's been with a fantastic lady. And then just having chats with her about some of the issues that she's coming across, and I'm like, and I always use the term adult shit placed on kids, you know, just all of the expectations, potentially, you know, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all of that adult rubbish placed on kids. And then with all of the hormone puberty stuff, them trying to figure all that out, I'm just...
It's hard enough getting through without all that other
with
stuff.
All that, yeah, exactly. And it's just crazy. Yeah, it's gone pretty, you know, what's coming on. I'm glad we've got the expertise within our organisation now to be able to help us navigate that and help young people in whānau be empowered around where to next and set a course right. So that's the guiding light there. But having the expertise and the passion from people to be able to do that. Yeah.
So how does your organisation work alongside the local schools?
So yeah, we've been obviously since the 80s. You've had we're quite well known within local schools. There's a lot of trust going on. We've been possibly because of our track record, you know, we have a little whakatauki around making sure you do what you say you're going to do. And we've built up some trust and some resiliency. So schools have just let us assist what needs to happen, and it's more really around we're really innovative around how we do things. So like within the alternative education program, the main focus there is re-engaging young people back into school. So we created an engage program. So what that is using funding to have 2 staff track for a period of time, up to 3 months, even longer. Every young person we get back into school, that we support them, mentor them, coach them how to stay in school, get to school, and even buffer some of the interactions with teachers around that. So we've got 2 fantastic staff doing that. And we're used to adapting and creating what we see from need and what needs to be done. And I think that's probably been the success for our organisation, that we're nimble enough to be able to be... I've used the analogy before around, I see government departments being cruise ships. They take a while to adapt and to turn around, where we're the little speedboat. We can go zip, 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 turn around, go back, go over here, there, to be able to adjust to what's going on. That's...
How many kids would you actively engage with a year?
Good question. We run a touch module that on Friday nights, and that has over 1,500 young people, and then from the age of 5 through to 14, and the good thing about that, that's self-sufficient. It's a little social enterprise, so every young person pays a fee, and we have 54 last year, 54 youth referees who referee that. We coach that. They get a little bit of money for doing that. And so, yeah, we do that. That's one of our programs. I think in our last performance report, there's around about 3,000 young people in a year. That we work with.
And with that program, Pākehā and Māori can play?
At boys and girls.
Yep.
And right across the board. So just about every primary and intermediate school in Palmerston North, the Wairāmanu participates in that. So 135 teams last year. 1,400 young people. Plus the appearance on Monrad Park on a Friday night. Yep.
What's your single biggest frustration with the work you do?
bureaucracy. I loathe it. I think, especially when my biggest hate for that was that if you're in a government department, people lose, I believe, whether the system or people who work within the system, lose sight that they're actually public servants. We're there to serve the public. So whatever's good for the public, we need to adjust our behaviour, our process to ensure that our service connects with those who need it. I struggle to see that around local government, some government departments. And in saying that, one of the most, I'm actually, with all the flack that an organisation like Oranga Tamariki gets, over the years, I think they've been one of the more nimble and also organisations that are reflective. They look at what's going wrong within themselves. They're prepared to put their hand up, own it, and make sure they're moving forward. That's not always seen in the media as that. But then I see other organisations say, like Moi, that are archaic. They operate in a system that's outdated.
Peter, it's lovely to hear you talk about that so positively, because it must break their heart at times what they hear.
I think, I don't know, but I think at times I might be seen as the one who's a bit of a bugbear and a bit of an activist that shakes the tree. But when I see what happens, the impact of that on the communities that I operate within, it breaks my heart that they don't realise that actually they're public servants. They need to be serving, and it's not even an ethnic thing. It's inequalities around social injustices that you don't have to be Māori. If you are struggling with learning and understanding how to navigate a system, and why do you put bloody systems in place? You should be serving people. You should get rid of them. And and that's the thing that's my biggest bugbear.
Angela Merkel has just resigned, or resigning in the process after 18 years, I think, in the role, phenomenally long time. And they would often say to her, "You've worn that outfit before." They call it a repeat or something. And she said, "I'm a public servant. I'm not a model." I just think that she is the most amazing public servant. She's incredibly humble, modest, tough, gets on with it, and it's never about her.
Yep.
And I just look at her and think she is, I think has been, in my mind, the leader of the world for a long time, and that, one, she's been there a long time, but she just gets on and does the job.
Yep.
And underneath it, you think she must be really, really smart, and all those things. But it's she's doing it as a public servant, and it hasn't been an easy job because she often doesn't have a majority. There's lots of political parties there. It's not as though she's had an easy ride, and she would have had lots of compromises and all that sort of carry on, and then dealt with some of the buffoons in the UK as prime ministers as well. It would have been pretty difficult, but I look at her as the epitome of a public servant. Wonderful. Yeah,
totally.
So, Peter, your children, have you got children?
Yeah, I've got a son, actually, and he was 22 yesterday.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's a shearer.
Ah! So, very, very sad week this week that we've lost Ronnie Goss, which is a huge loss to the shearing community. Wonderful woman. And died of a heart attack last Friday in competition up in Tamanui.
Oh, wow.
And
she was shearing.
No, she was a rousey.
Oh, yeah,
she was a rousey. She was 53.
Yeah.
And just a stunning woman. And her son shears competitively. And amazing woman. And Maori woman. And so very, very sad for New Zealand this week to lose that from and then the Golden Shears, which is supposed to be this weekend, being cancelled. Yeah,
so my son was keen to go and have a look at that. So he's only been shearing, I think this is his first year sharing, he was pressing, liked the money, then wanted to do sharing, then obviously just sort of got into that sort of work. And I was like, he's not afraid of hard work, which is great, but I'm like...
There is no easy way to
I
share.
know, I'm like going, why don't you use your head, boy, going rather than, you know... But oh well, that's what he wants to do, and he enjoys it, and so...
That might come later.
Yeah, well, the good thing I liked is that he's not afraid of hard work.
Yeah.
So, and that is hard work.
So is he skin colour? Is he's from...
He's fair, and the interesting thing about him, he's totally fluent in Te Reo Māori. So we... what I noticed from when I was doing holiday programs, I started seeing a group of young people from the community that I think I spoke about a little bit earlier, that were being brought up in kōhanga reo and kuru kaupapa. I was wondering why. Then I noticed something special about these young people. They were really inquisitive, curious, a thirst for learning, and just a hunger for life. And I was like, what's going on? Same type of young person, same child, same colour, same community. What's the difference? It was that they had confidence in who they are and where they came from. So I approached that school. That school was Mana Tamariki, and it's here based in Palmerston North. And I approached that school and said, when my son is born, can I put him into that school? And they accepted him. And as part of that, one of the parents had to speak Māori all the time. So he stayed in that school till he was 13. He got to a stage where he wanted other things. He wanted to do sport, and his peer grouping was small. So he was in a class of 3, him and 2 girls. And he just sort of outgrew that. And so it sort of hurt us a little bit. Well, it hurt me a little bit that he didn't want to continue in that medium, but he had a good grasp from basically day dot. I was going to say
he would have had a great grounding.
And so he's it's his first language, and he can switch in between both all the time. And when we go back to one of our marae, all of the queer want to sit him down and talk to him. They're just fascinated that these young people can speak Māori. Yeah, so so he's been brought up in that medium, and that was what I saw coming through, and I realised, wow, there's a gift there. What is it? And it made me really confident around that's the answer to a lot of the issues that we're seeing in Māori communities around reconnecting to our culture.
And then I think going forward, there's going to be more and more Pākehā kids that can speak both languages fluently.
Yep.
And then what comes from that?
Wow, what comes from that is, I think we're going to have a fantastic nation going forward. And especially COVID's made me realise, why don't we just stop all of this crap that we're doing to our planet, our environment, papatūānuku. We've got an opportunity in Aotearoa. We're big enough and small enough to be self-sufficient if we wish to. I think that's where we need to go to. Be regenerative, plant more, go back to native trees, planting, regenerative farming, planting all our waterways out, stop all of the sucking of fresh water and selling it overseas to the Chinese. We need
What's with that?
I think it's the dumbest, stupid thing out. It's really, but then, Māori have a treaty claim on it, and I'm like, I think people are afraid that for Māori to own it because why? Because they will share it. I don't get it. I think it's the fear of the unknown.
I think I think the fear is growing, Peter, as Māori are becoming more
confident, independent.
More confident, independent, more visible.
Are becoming stronger in their independence around rangatiratanga. And the interesting thing about all of that, it's a journey that I've been on, especially around for the work that I believe the answer is for us as a people and nation is around fully expressing our rangatiratanga. And what that means is being independent, self-determining, and controlling your own destiny. I think that's positive for everyone. The problem is that, some Pākehā see that as being, that's a bunch of activists that are trying to camp on a piece of land. Well, if you scratch the surface, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
That land is stolen from for generations. But it's an interesting concept. And the more and more we explore that concept, I think it's going to be better for the whole country.
Absolutely. How do you think teaching New Zealand history is going to go down in the next few years?
No, I'm looking forward to it because, when I was at school, we were learning about Napoleon, and I was like, really? Why are we learning about a Frenchman? It's an interesting concept because I've used it in working with young people around, especially young Māori and young Māori males, around when they're dropping their heads and they feel that pressure's on them. Because I coach as well, so sport, rugby league, and I've used the term quite a bit that you all descend from chiefs. You can do anything you want to. You host your own rangatiratanga. Your tūpuna sailed across the Pacific. They were explorers, they were navigators, they created empires. You descend from that. You have the power within. And for too long, we've been demonised as being you're dumb, black, and a no-hoper. But if you flip the script to actually what history shows them, in the 1820s, 1830s, our ancestors were trading with the west coast of California, the goldfields, Australia, obviously flax, potatoes, whatever, and bringing that back. Some of them would buy muskets to settle old deals, old scores, but they were trading right across the whole South Pacific. And the first settlers, they managed to survive because our ancestors fed them.
Yep, looked after them.
So it's like, that history is empowering. It's empowering for a lot of people. I can't wait for it to be pulled out. And I've been following it quite actively through social media around what's going on and some of the stories that are being told. And it's really exciting. I'm a bit of a, closet history buff. I read consistently around one of my favourite people that I like reading about is Te Rauparaha, about what he did. Some people see him as being, maybe if he was in the modern day, as the head of the Mongomo. Well, I see him as being a fantastic leader that navigated issues and adapting for his people to ensure they survived and they lived and they were able to thrive. And but there are these loads of history and stories throughout Māoridom of people like that. And for too long, those stories have been hidden. And maybe it was because of the impact of colonisation. Maybe it was done on purpose. I have no idea, but I think it's I'm looking forward to the time that it actually gets shared.
Ian Taylor is a really interesting guy because he didn't grow up with Te Rau.
Yeah.
And you see him now stepping into the storytelling and space, and he talks about was one of the organisers of when the Waka came out last year. They had the Endeavour coming out, and he's going, we need the Waka to come out from at the same time and tell that story and bring that to life. And, because the thing with Māori love stories.
Yeah. I think everybody loves stories, especially before digital media came.
Yeah, but you guys are good at it.
Yeah, there's a few storytellers.
Like, naturally, Māori are good storytellers. And so it's going to be I think it's going to be quite a turbulent time in schools because those kids are going to go home and they're going to be telling stories to parents who are not going to be particularly happy to hear those stories, and they were going, what is this shit?
Well, when you scratch the surface of some of the stories, I've read quite a bit about it, and it's like the biggest thing that comes to the forefront for me was the underlying racism that was behind some of those decisions, especially around some of the early government acts, the Native Schools Act, the Talking Suppression Act, the Native Lands Act. They were tools to actually land grab. That's all it was. And even, dare I say it, the BNZ, it was set up by a guy named Thomas Russell, who actually pushed to get the Waikato walls going so that he could grab as much land after it and profit from it. It's like,
And Peter, that was happening all around the world. That was
at that time.
That was an old formula that had worked.
Yep.
And bloody Maori were really difficult to deal with because you held on to the land really well.
Well, the interesting thing about that is like even stories of when that stuff was going on in the early 1830s, and the whalers and sealers in Rangatira would be having difficulty with having to issue justice on drunken sailors. And, they were over killing these people for no good reason. So they wanted to actually, we're trading with them, we should be looking after them, rather than telling them for basically breaking tikanga or tapu or kawa that was going on, a natural law, and so they would settle it, but they were just over it. We need to be doing a deal, and that was part of the reason around signing. Some hapu signed the Treaty of Waitangi because they actually wanted to get on. They didn't want to fight all the time. They just wanted to settle and live comfortably.
Jay Wilson told me the story of when the different tribes would fight each other, and he said the woman decided whether they were allowed to go and fight the next one, and that was whether they had enough stores stored up over the summer ready for winter, and that they weren't allowed to go off and raid and fight the next iwi or whatever down the road, or hapu. And it was just, and he said, that just cracked me up.
Yeah.
Just, no, boys, you're not allowed to do that. Make sure we've got enough food first before you can do that.
Well, you think about it, the weapons that they had back then, obviously, there would have been a bit of maiming and that sort of stuff, but it wasn't until the introduction of muskets that mass killing happened, so it would have been a bit of, it would have been interesting times. I've always said especially to my wife, I'd love to go back in time and live in those times. It would just be fantastic. And she goes, really?
Let's go.
I want to go there.
Peter, you've got a list here of stuff on your piece of paper.
Yep.
Is there anything there that we haven't covered yet?
It's probably about moving forward. Like the interesting thing that I'm looking at this list, and it's just notes that I made around preparing me and my mindset around this conversation. But probably around moving forward, we constantly always look for solutions, and the main thing I want to do is make sure that we are, if we keep getting hung up on the impacts of colonisation, we'll be stuck in a quagmire and would struggle to get out of it. We've got to look and adapt to make sure that we move forward. And I see huge change coming, and I've witnessed it myself around the reo movement and that's done for urban Māori, and actually not just urban Māori, everyone around, even our country is being more acceptance. When Hinewehi Mohi did sung the national anthem in Te Reo Māori, like the uproar on that. But then look at what's happened because of that. And I don't even know how long ago that was, but
just a lifetime ago, but it's not that long ago.
It was only basically around about 10 years ago. And then where we've moved to thus far around more Pākehā wanting to speak te reo, a lot of recently I've been started listening to the national radio program, and every reporter introduces themselves in Te Reo Māori and signs off in Te Reo Māori, and then just the conversation is changing across this country. Now, I'm looking forward to the next 20 years of what potentially can happen. We are at a prime time. I'm really excited about that. I'm seeing in our organisation for years we struggled to be able to make ends meet to do things, but now we're at a stage where we're creating our own asset bases. We've been creative around that. Government departments are talking to us and giving us opportunities to find pilots and ways of doing things that are long-term issues, and giving us some creativity and freedom to be able to be creative in that space to be able to do it. Like I think I said to you before we spoke, we've got a program called WAR, work readiness, attitude, reliability, and we teach young people how to work, and we pay them. So we all know one of the benefits of working is actually getting paid. So, and in all the benefits, but also the pitfalls of that, and supporting young people on their journey so that they are breaking away from having the ability to get used to surviving on the benefit, to actually earning money, decent money. Minimum wage is about to go to $20 an hour, to be able to live and potentially thrive. So,
which is that mobility thing, again, right?
And we all know the benefits of work, getting up every day, and then talking to these young people. They go, "Oh, Pa, I love this because I'm doing something." Just simple stuff like that. I'm doing something I look forward to going to. Today, two of them said to me, "Are you going now?" Because before we did this, "Are you going now, Pa?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm off. I've got something else going on." Oh, why can't you just stay with us? Because we like being around you. You don't tell us off as much. I was like, it's because I don't hang around with you as much. If I was around here a bit longer, maybe not. Yeah, but anyway, it's little stuff like that I'm starting to see these meek young people that were lacking confidence, that anxiety issues, all of that are starting to enter into the workforce, and we've already started brokering them. So we've got 12 weeks to teach them how to work and then broker them into a job, and we've managed to touch wood. Thus far, we're week 3, and 4 young people have already got full-time work. Now, these were young people that I would think coming into this program, they would have struggled to actually get off the couch. Now, talking to MB recently, one of the advisors there was telling me, you get 2 of those young people into work, that will pay for the 12 weeks of this program. Why can't this type of program be activated right across the country instead of...
But see, the thing that I think you're overlooking, Peter, you said you get called a social entrepreneur, right? And you've talked a lot before about solutions, right? And not being keen on bureaucracy, right? All of those, the closer you can get solutions designed and created to the coalface, I believe, the more successful they'll be.
The better the change.
Because you'll get a buzz out of that, rather than that coming out of central government and sending out this mandate, actually creating it and drawing, it's a different mechanism. And, last time I saw you, you said you're about to launch this new thing and it's taking up a lot of time and effort and whatever, right?
Well, that's what this is.
And I'm going, but you've created it, and it'll be good for you as well, because it gets your the juices flowing again of that entrepreneurial bloody mechanism. And you're empowered to do it.
Well, the next step is, I'm thinking about sustainability of it. So we're about to do this road, Te Turanga, these potentially tendering opportunities around planting native trees. I'm wanting to tender for one of those, so we don't need to make money out of it. We're not a profit-making business, so I want to potentially grab one of them, tender for it, so I can I'd hire a couple of people to teach young people how to plant these trees properly, and then constantly have a chain of young people going that, and then potentially from that brokering them into other work. It's not rocket science. It's actually quite easy, I think.
It is for you.
Yeah.
It is for you
Yeah.
because you make it sound easy.
Yeah.
But it's not. I think that's really important for you to actually understand that you've got this natural gift of doing this sort of stuff. Not everybody has that.
Yeah. And I suppose you've got to have a bit of a passion for it, otherwise, because, you're not going to make $1 million out of this stuff,
No, but you could create a whole lot more and actually, It's interesting you say that, because that's not true, is it?
What's that?
Well, you say you're not going to make maybe not for you, but if you look at the compounding value, it's far more than $1 million.
Oh, totally. Less people on the benefit, more people in income, they potentially pay more in taxes, they contribute to the community, they buy off local businesses. One day, hopefully, we get to the stage.
They're not in
jail. They're not committing crime. They're supporting their families. The interesting thing about this too, this program, war program, every person we selected, and one of the ones, the big tick for me, was that they wanted to earn money to contribute to their household. Every young person. The biggest motivation for them. And I was like, yep, you're in.
How cool is that?
Like, coming from the mouths of babes, it was really cool. And I was like, no prompting, why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
I want to support mum and dad. I want to support my younger siblings. I want to support my auntie. I want to support my caregiver.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah. And then somebody will be looking at them and going, I want to do what my cousin's doing, because there's a whole lot of mana, inducing behaviour going on there. The
ripple effect. And the good thing is, Work and Income have been really supportive of the program, so MSD, and so normally what happens, there's a process called mana and mahi, where there's employer subsidies. So that's just been boosted. So what happens now is that every one of these young people that get placed into work, the employer gets an employer subsidy, $16,000 over 2 years, to help subsidise their salaries. And then every 3 months, the young person gets a $1,000 cash payment in their bank account for being in work. Why wouldn't you work?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, those are government incentives that are on. And when we first proposed that, some of the government bureaucrats were going, well, you'll get the government subsidies. I was like, well, no, I don't want the government subsidies. We're not about that. That government subsidy, can you hold it off, can go to the next employer. We're an interim 12-week period. I only want the funding to be able to pay them the minimum wage while we're doing this. The rest can follow the employer post this.
Peter, this is slightly off subject, but it's sort of similar. Today, driving into work, listening to an economist talking, and they were talking about the government now is in surplus. They thought they'd be in deficit of 11 billion, and they're in surplus of 3.5 billion, right? It's a big difference, big number there.
Huge difference.
And they said, well, why is that? And they said, well, one of the surprises were the number of companies that have paid back their wage subsidy they got, right?
Yep.
Back in, I'm going to guess, maybe April,
yep.
Right? They took that money, they've got their business going, and they've paid the money back.
Great.
Right? And I would imagine a lot of them didn't have to pay the money back. Maybe they did. I don't think they did. But I think at the end of the day, whether it's Pākehā or Māori, I think that companies and individuals would much rather generate their own funds than have it come from somewhere else.
Yep.
Because then it's not just the money, but the mana comes with it as well.
Yep.
Right? Which is so different.
I reckon what should happen is the government should name those companies and acknowledge them around doing that, and then the social equity that goes with, as an organisation, like for me, I'd go, I'll go and
spend my money there
from their company, because they're doing the right thing by the country.
Yep.
And it's like, we should promote that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That social equity stuff. Right across the whole country. Who's doing the best for this country being the best it can be? That's the key around this. It's like, we are in paradise. We live in the best country in the world. And you actually don't have to step too far out of Aotearoa to actually realise that. even the islands with their nice beaches. You go a little bit inland and actually it's not that nice. So, you know, we have the golden sands and all of that. We've just got to clean up a little bit of things, a few things, you know. Although my sister works with Fonterra, I'm not too favourable what Fonterra does to the environment.
You know what? They are working hard.
Yeah,
Peter,
totally. And acknowledge that. And so
I met their sustainability manager 18 months ago, and they were, you know, they're looking at becoming a B Corp. And I went,
wow.
And I went, what? And she goes, yeah, we know we have to. That would cost them $1 million a year and to pay to B Lab to be a B Corp, right? And she goes, but we know we'd get that back in spades. So we've been through the assessment, and we're really keen to do that. And going, okay. Now that was at the time when Fonterra were getting their ass kicked everywhere, and this was going on behind the scenes. And so that really surprised me to hear that, and that they had those. So, you know, I think that
it's more just the farming practices of bloody,
not using coal to dry milk powder. You know, that's just dumbass.
Yeah.
You know, and lazy and whatever as well, right? Just clean that shit up.
Yeah. It's all about constant improvement. Everything we do, if we can constantly improve.
Yeah, and a lot of that is becoming.
Process.
Yeah, we're becoming more conscious of the impact we have on the environment.
Yeah, cool.
So, Peter, and also to round up on this conversation, you know, when I first asked you that I wanted this conversation, what was your response initially?
I cringed, actually. My gut sort of cringed. It was like, I've struggled being in the public eye. I've loathed it, mainly because I don't like the light being shined on me, because it's not really about me. It's I see these loads of great individuals with what we do. So you came in today and you met two of our staff, and they're fantastic people. You know, we've got 30 staff that are really passionate about what they do, and every day they create change. And I'm just the person that at the stage just sort of sets the waka, makes sure that we're on track with contracts and budgets and all that sort of stuff now. That's all I really do. I miss engaging with young people, hence why I dip my toe in and out of different programs. And I still coach rugby league, and that's I get to work with young people then. Again, I'm just, I think it's at a stage now that I really, we've had a fantastic journey on the back of a lot of passion and drive and focus, but also I think it needs to be told about some of the experiences that we come across, and potentially, hopefully, some of the solutions that we have. In every community there's a solution. Every community. People just got to have the opportunity to be able to, one, create that and help that grow. Yeah.
So we could finish there, but we're not going to, because I want to go back to the point of you cringing when I asked you. Because I think about this podcast, this interview we've just had.
Yep.
And I don't think, yes, we've shone a little bit of light on you, but we've shone more light on your work.
Yep.
And what you're passionate about and the impact you're making. Mm-hmm. And so I also would encourage you going forward that the world needs to hear this stuff.
Okay.
Because we hear what's newsworthy is bad news is newsworthy.
Yep.
Good news is less so.
Yep. Jeez, that's a hard question. Probably the reason why I cringed was, telling the story and how can I ensure that I are respectful of the relationships that we as an organisation need to maintain and create, but also highlight some of the pitfalls of what we do. But I can rant, and I'm very conscious I do not want to rant, and I want to make sure that we do look forward to what's going on. Like, I go back to it and I think about it quite often. I'm looking forward to the next 20 years, especially what's happened in the past 20 years and what we can potentially do. It's exciting. It's exciting because I see constantly the passion around a lot of young people and what they're doing, the energy. We're a young country, history-wise, and I realised that one time when I was in this place, I go back to Mexico, a place called Palenque. I was in a jungle in the middle of Mexico, and I stood in front of this temple. It was like a pyramid. I looked at it and I saw the plaque, and it was like 8,000 years old. And I was like, what the heck was happening in Aotearoa 8,000 years ago? It's just crazy. And I'm like, we are so young, so we have the ability to do whatever we want to if we put our minds to it and our energies to it. Hence why I like the concept of collective energy, collective intelligence. You can have everybody's collective energies, knowledge, understanding to actually help solve an issue that people might have, or feedback. I looked at that, and it's the more and more I think about it, it's like old wānanga, and I've recently started engaging with wānanga, the wānanga process, and I like that method of learning, mainly because no one hosts all of the knowledge. The knowledge is the collective knowledge, the collective intelligence, and it's shared. So it's just by the whole concept of collective intelligence, the more and more I think about it, it's an old indigenous model that's being revived. And actually, you've helped bring it out to the mainstream, Harv.
And look, it's interesting you say that, Peter, because my knowledge of Maori culture is skin deep. And, when you talk like that, I just glow inside to hear that. And I intuitively know that, and I know when the more we embrace Maori culture and values as a company, the better our company goes.
Oh, imagine if the whole country embraced these values, around Manaakitanga, so all of our visitors that came into the country, that we host them and celebrate their arrival and look after them and make sure that they're safe when they travel around our country. Imagine that. People would want to flood here.
Yeah. And
then we have mātauranga around different sacred spots that, I spoke about going to a place that was 8,000 years old. Imagine if that knowledge was prevalent around so you go to Taranaki and you know where all of the old past sites and who used to be the chiefs in those spots and what they did in those times, that people would come to this country just to hear those stories.
Yeah.
And then the whole, even the tikanga around looking after the environment and the rivers and easy, transferable Māori concepts that actually what it is about doing the right thing and making sure we're looking after our planet and each other. It was done. They were survival tools for people that came across the Pacific to a foreign environment to look after each other, that are transferable to the future. It's just crazy. The more and more you think about it, even whanaungatanga, about connection. So you're wanting to strengthen relationships. So Māori organisations and businesses operate like this all the time. We trust each other because we know each other. You don't really step outside the circle if you don't have a relationship with anyone. It's a worldwide concept. It's nothing new. It's like, hence why I like the whole collective intelligence stuff. There's a whole bunch of people I don't normally work with, or different sectors of even what I do, but you get to trust each other, you get to know each other, you build relationships that, okay, one day in the future, if I wanted to get into biotech
Yep.
or whatever. There's a network.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the essence of it.
And one of the things that we've been really keen on, Peter, is making sure that we're not there as a network first. We're there for the individual first. So you're there to develop and evolve and to help other people and let them help you. That's your primary reason for being there. If it was there for you to better your business and you're there to what can you do for me and whatever, that's a whole different relationship.
Yep.
And so it's about connecting first, and then when we've connected, then what else can come from there? But you've got to connect first.
Yep.
And it takes time and commitment and not have any agenda, right? And so when you create that, because a lot of people don't understand why collective intelligence works. It's because that is the basis, first of all. Let's connect.
Yep.
And
The whanaungatanga process.
yeah, right. And so we get people to do their timelines and
Yep.
so forth. And one of the things that we are embarking on more and more is actually actively adopting Maori culture and not letting go, but just quietly and actively merging the two and taking on more and more Maori culture. Because going back to your question, what was happening in Aotearoa 8,000 years ago? Not much. What was happening in Mexico 8,000 years ago? A lot. All of that's indigenous. It's long-term learning based on community and all that sort of stuff, right? We've just buggered it up a little bit in the last couple of years, right? And
last
and
couple
now,
100.
Yeah, and now we're just unbuggering it
Yep.
at the moment. And that's exciting.
Oh, that's extremely exciting. And if you look at the COVID process, even how long were we in lockdown? A couple of months, if that. The world had an opportunity, the planet had an opportunity to breathe. All around the world, I think I read somewhere that in Venice, dolphins came through the channels.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck? So if that's a couple of months, imagine if we did that for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And that exact place where I was in Palenque, they had people chopping back the jungle on this building because they reckon within a year, if they didn't do that, it would be covered in jungle.
Right.
So it'd regenerate. Why can't we go back to, we give our planet an opportunity to regenerate, and how much great, I reckon we've got to get to a stage where we flick off the internet and just stop and breathe, and you've got to actually communicate with the environment a little bit more, study the stars and breathe, and the signs, the natural signs, that we've lost that intuitive knowledge because we're not in tune with it. And actually we used to be, and actually not just Māori culture. I've recently been watching the Vikings. It was in European culture as well, and it's like it's.
But I think that's the key, Peter, that for me, Indigenous means things got learnt over hundreds of years or thousands of years, right? Little bits compounding, intergenerational, all that sort of stuff, right? And it's when we think we become clever that we go and lose all that ancient learning. And that's what I see happening in Aotearoa now, is the ancient learning is starting to come forward. Hopefully, as Pākehā, we might actually go back and look at what were the ancient learnings that we've lost from our cultures back there as well. Be interesting to see if we do that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because you look at the circle of things, you go, we as a human being are part of the natural world. The problem we've got is that I think the last couple of years is that the human being has tried to become the god and control the natural world, and that's where it's flipped the balance, and the natural world's going to go, actually,
let's get rid of the scum.
Yeah, wipe you out and
start again.
Go again.
Because at the end of the day, somebody's talked about saving the planet, and somebody said the planet's fine. The planet will carry on, regardless of what we do. We can have it all-out nuclear war. The planet will be fine. It will just carry on. It'll adapt, absorb that, and carry on.
It has over time.
Yeah, and we have to. We're the ones that have got to sort our shit out, not the planet. Yeah.
And why not start in our own backyard?
Peter, why don't we start in our own backyard? Thank you very much for your time, Peter. I hope this has not been too uncomfortable.
No, it's been fun. Thank you, Harv.
And thank you for your time. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you create going forward from where you are now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what's on the horizon. I constantly think. I said to my collective intelligence team, I said, I do not want to die here, and that's more of a, I don't know what that's about actually. But the interesting thing is,
die here as in
or doing what I do.
Yep.
But the interesting thing is that I can't see. I love what I do mainly because I see the benefits of what we do in the young people and the families that are starting to thrive from it. And we're at a place where we got an opportunity to assist, grow, develop, and help people not only survive, but I've come up with a new T-shirt actually. I do these T-shirt things. So survive, live, then thrive. So live, survive, live, thrive, and that's move from survival to be able to live or live and then thrive. And if we do that, we can do anything really. So I'm just looking forward to doing that. Really, it's a big ask, but I love doing that.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Harv.
You've just been listening to an episode of Stuff That Matters Now, brought to you by Collective Intelligence. I hope you enjoyed listening to the fun stuff, the rugged stuff, and the complete stuff-ups that have helped this particular Collective Intelligence member evolve while making the world a better place. Do check out our Stuff That Matters Now podcast series on your favourite podcast provider, or visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz to get links to new episodes. Contact us if you want to learn more about how we can help you evolve yourself and others. Thanks for listening.